The Hudson Library and Historical Society presents WHK's Sports Fix commentator and the ClevelandPan.com columnist Jonathan Knight with How to Fix the Browns in 10 Easy Steps at the Hudson Library's Flood Meeting Room on January 29, 2014. Now, here's Browns expert and WHK Sports Fix commentator, Jonathan Knight.
Well, thank you for coming out on a cold evening. You're in for a great talk tonight. We have Jonathan Knight with us. He has been writing about Cleveland sports for over 25 years. He started at the age of 8 when he started writing his own newsletter on the Browns. He's gone on to publish 7 books on Cleveland sports. He is a columnist for the Cleveland Fan, and you can listen to his him commenting on Cleveland sports at sportsfix.net. Tony Grossi, who is the sports writer for the Cleveland Plain Dealer, calls Knight's Cardiac Kids the most comprehensive documentation of the Browns' 1980 team. That's a pretty good endorsement. We have the Learned Owl Bookshop here, and they will be selling Jonathan's books. Jonathan Knight will be signing them after the program. It's a great gift for yourself or anybody else who loves the Browns. So, without any more ado, we're going to find out how to fix the Browns. Thank you.
See, it's an intuitive title, right? Of course we can fix the Browns in 10 easy steps. It's just like, hanging a clock or something, isn't it? I'm proud to stand here before you today and say that it has been 6 days and the Browns have not fired a head coach in that time. I'm proud to be able to say that. It's almost like those signs you see outside of factories. 6 days since last industrial accident, so they should hang a sign outside of at Berea. 6 days since last firing of head coach, which is pathetic in a way. And here's when I knew it was really pathetic. Was this was over the weekend. So they hired Pettin on Thursday of last week, and I don't know if you saw it, but there was sort of a mock article that came out the next day saying Browns fire coach after 18 hours, saying just need a new change in direction. It was a joke, it was an Onion type of article, and it went viral. I got a text from an old friend of mine over the weekend, and she saw it, and she says, "Oh my God, they fired him! I can't believe this! They actually fired him!" And I had to talk her down and say, "No, it's not real. They really didn't fire him." She's like, "No, it looks real. This is really real." I'm like, No. So for a half hour, we went back and forth. I said, "No, it's not real. Go to ESPN. It's not real." And I'm thinking, we've reached a point where that is believable. I mean, it is unbelievable as it seems like, and she got it was a joke and moved on. But you reached a point where, like, even for a second, why would you believe that? Why would you believe that a team would fire a coach in 18 hours? And yet we've reached that point. So, and in that spirit, the original, I think you probably saw on the signs or even on the website that the original title of this thing was going to be Past Glories, Future Hopes. And when we originally had talked about doing a presentation a few months ago, I was like, all right, yeah, we can do something like that kind of ties the books together and ties the team together and do a lot of different, weave a lot of threads together. And over the next 2 months, things just reached a point with the Browns. There's like, okay, I can't do that. We can't do that. Nobody wants to hear that. I don't want to talk about that. We need to do something different. So not unlike the Browns, we pulled the plug in midstream. We rebuilt. We started from scratch, and we came up with this: How to Fix the Browns in 10 Easy Steps. So the other disclaimer I have to give is that this isn't going to be one of those in really technical inside football type things, like, okay, they need to draft this guy, they need to run this type of offense. Nobody wants to hear that. And we've tried to do that. They've tried to do that. And people have tried to stand up and say, okay, here's exactly how you do it. Here's the blueprint to do that. Here's the Moneyball approach to football, to how to do this. And that hasn't worked. So what this is, and what this is going to be, is a little more like the Da Vinci Code. If you remember the Da Vinci Code, if you're familiar with the book or with the movie, that there's all these hidden codes and hidden meanings and things in the book anyway, or in the movie, in paintings and in all books and all kinds of works of art. that tell you unlock these great mysteries that we still don't know the answers to. And if you look, in all seriousness, if you look at some of these little nooks and crannies of the Browns' history, there's these little indications that, okay, they're doing this wrong. What they're doing now is wrong. They're not paying attention to their own history. There are these little nuggets, these little hints. It's like, this is why you're failing. And some of them are silly, and they're going to seem silly, but I think in almost a spiritual sense that we should really explore some of these types of things. So, that being said, this is Super Bowl week, and for the, 42nd straight year, the Browns are not a part of this. And we're used to that by now. But you would look at if you've been watching the playoffs at all and have been paying attention to the Broncos and the Seahawks who are going to play on Sunday, you look at these teams, you think, my God, the Browns are light years away from this. Like Mike Polk said, the Factory of Sadness guys, like they're not even playing the same game that you're playing, that type of thing. And in one sense, yeah, they're a long way off, but in another sense, if you look at some of the little things we're going to point out tonight in their history, you think, well, maybe this is possible. Maybe they're not quite as far away as we think we are. So if you look at, we'll start with the very first one, okay? This is easy. Dress for success. This is a tip that you'll hear a lot in like job interview type of instructions, advice for career type of things, that you dress for success, right? You need to dress for the type of job that you want. I think that's one of the big lines that you'll see repeated in these types of conversations. And in the Browns' case, some of these are not actually real, okay? This is sort of an artist rendition. But basically, this is the uniform combinations that they have at their disposal, right? They have a pretty simple uniform. They've always had a simple uniform. That's one of their sort of the allures of the team and that people really like. No logo on the helmet, basic 3 colors. And it has, though, changed a little bit through the years. We've seen it evolve a little bit. The helmet's more or less stayed the same, but the jerseys and the pants have evolved and changed a little bit. And we saw it especially this year because they introduced a brand new uniform combination for the first time, and that was the brown jerseys with the brown pants. It didn't have the orange stripe. Again, this is sort of a different type of rendition, but it didn't have the orange stripe. But that was the first time we'd ever seen that. And while we applaud the Browns for trying something new, what they didn't realize or what they didn't really factor in was the inherent problem in dressing for success in their case, in that the problem wasn't so much trying to think outside the box. The problem was the brown pants. They didn't take into account that their record now in games that they wear brown pants is 3-11 all time when they wear the brown pants. So you think, well, okay. Not a great sample size, not a huge sample size, but that's pretty indicative that, okay, there's some bad karma with the brown pants. We need to lose that. Because if you remember, when they introduced the brown pants a couple years ago, everybody hated it. Called them poopy pants. It was bad news. So now they tried to do something new, and it failed, right? So the brown jerseys and the brown pants, we may see them again, but I get the feeling that, okay, people didn't really like it, and they're losing while they're wearing them. So that's a bad combination. If you look at the reason I bring this up is in my latest Browns book, the Browns Bible, it goes into a lot of these deals. It actually breaks down their record by every single uniform combination. So it says what their record is when they wear the white jerseys, what their record is when they wear the brown jerseys, so on and so forth, every combination. And you can sort of see patterns start to emerge from that. So the brown pants, for instance, you look at that 3-11, okay, I got a bad feeling about that. Let's try something else. So you figure, what's the uniform combination they've worn the most over the years? It'd be white and white, right? And it's true, they have worn that more. That's the combination they have worn for more games than any other. And so white combo all time, white jerseys, white pants, they have a winning percentage of .567. That's great. That's really good. And the pants, the white pants, that's the only, believe it or not, when you solely look at pants, the white pants is the only combination in which they have a .500 record when they wear the white pants. When you look at solely at pants, any other variation of pants, they have a losing record. It's like, all right, let's focus on that, white pants. There you go. Problem solved, right? So you say, all right, so the other wrinkle to it is you can only control what you're wearing at home in the NFL, right? You can pick what you wear at home. On the road, the home team gets to pick, and then you have to adapt. If they're wearing white, you need to wear dark. So their best combination at home is white on white. Like, all right, so let's try that. Let's go with that. Their best combination on the road is brown and white. We've seen that quite a bit more at home in recent years, particularly in the last 20 years. We've seen the brown jerseys and the white pants at home. That doesn't work as well at home. It works better on the road. Take note. But the funny thing is that neither of those combinations, even white on white, that's not the best uniform combination in terms of winning percentage that the Browns have. There's another one that's actually better, and I don't think anyone realizes this. Does anyone want to take a guess what the most successful uniform combination the Browns have ever had? What combination of colors? Anyone want to take a guess? I think you'll be surprised. Orange and white? No. Orange and white, that was another one that they did white jerseys and orange pants back in the 70s and 80s, and that wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. Then, not too long ago, they did orange jerseys and white pants, and they actually never won a game. They're 0-3. They've never won a game with it. So there's another, similar to the brown pants, the orange jerseys are not. So I don't think we're going to be seeing an orange jersey, brown pants. That would be a bad combination. If you see them wearing that, turn off the television. The winning combination actually is what we know of as the Cardiac Kids combination, brown jerseys, white pants. Believe it or not, the Browns have a .583 winning percentage. That's the best winning percentage in their history in terms of uniform combination. It's amazing. It's a smaller sample size, to be sure, but there were some lean years in there. They started wearing those, they introduced the orange pants actually in 1975 in a year that they went 3-11. So instantly you think, wow, they wore those and had a bad year, but they still wound up with the winningest combination of that uniform being their winningest combination. So think, all right, especially then when you look at the fact that since they've been back in this expansion era, they've actually only worn that combination twice. I was like, this is an untapped resource. Let's give this a shot. And if nothing else, it just flashes back to the Cardiac Kid years and think, hey, that was fun. Remember how much fun that was? It's more. I'd rather watch the Browns lose when they look good than not. So, something to consider. You know, I don't know that we can totally dismiss that out of hand. So there's your first one, dressed for success. Second one, this is easy. Stop drafting quarterbacks. Knock it off. They keep doing this. And this picture, I'm sure everybody has seen variations of this picture. And before we even get into this, the first thing it's a funny picture, right? I get it. You know, point made. Every single quarterback that the Browns have had. Somebody brought a Tim Couch jersey in 1999 and then put the names of every single guy who started. So now we're down to the knees. You can see. And now this isn't actually up to date because we're going to have to add another one now too. The only problem I have with this is it's not technically to give the Browns a little bit of a break. A lot of these guys were emergency quarterbacks, right? They weren't actually, you look at this and think, my God, they've had that many guys that they've deemed the starting quarterback. That's not actually the case. You know, only about half of them were actually deemed the starting quarterback, which still isn't good. But a lot of these were guys that you went through 3-4 quarterbacks in a season and you're just finding guys off the street and throwing them in there to play quarterback. But be that as it may. The point is that the Browns have never had success drafting quarterbacks, and they keep trying. It's like Albert Einstein, the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I'm going to read off 6 names, and you tell me what they have in common. Brandon Weeden, Brady Quinn, Tim Couch, Mike Phipps, Bobby Garrett, Harry Aganis. Anyone want to take a guess what those 6 people have in common? First-round picks. Those are the 6 guys, 6 quarterbacks that the Browns have drafted in their history in the first round. It's safe to say, including the 2 that you've never heard of, it's safe to say that's not successful. None of those guys had successful NFL careers. And these are first-round draft picks. If you spend a first-round draft pick on a quarterback, and most of them were very high, a couple of them were, Couch and Phipps were the #1 overall pick. If you're drafting a quarterback in the first round, you're expecting him to lead you to, if not a championship, then certainly to a championship caliber. That is what is expected of him. And safe to say that did not happen with any of these 6 guys. In fact, in the last 2, for example, Garrett never played for the Browns. First-round draft pick, never played for the Browns, never started a game in the NFL, and then again, has never played in the NFL. I mean, this is a first-round draft pick, and that's inexcusable. So that's not to show again, too, that it's not just this modern era, that they have a history of doing this. And in fact, the Browns, in their history, have drafted 14 quarterbacks in the first 3 rounds of the college draft. Those 6 and 8 more. 6 of those 14 never started a game for the Browns. 4 never got into a game with the Browns. 4 of the 14, basically a third of the guys you're spending a first or second or third round draft pick. Only 2 of the 14 ever started a playoff game, and they both lost. They both started and lost their playoff games. Milt Plum and Mike Phipps were the only 2. Only 1 ever made the Pro Bowl. 1 out of 14 high draft pick quarterback made the Pro Bowl. Milt Plum. And not to criticize Milt Plum, but this is in the era where the Browns' offense was turn around and hand the ball to Jim Brown, get out of the way. So that he made the Pro Bowl, and good for him. But this was not an era that a quarterback was leading the team. Those 6 first-round draft picks that we mentioned, by the way, have a winning percentage of .385, the equivalent of in a 16-game NFL season, that'd be 6-10. So those 6 guys of the game they've started, that's an average 6-10 record. I would call that failure. They've called 100 of those 14, 138 touchdown passes, 188 interceptions. I mean, you can do this all day. There's all kinds of statistics that back this up. Now, if you look at, so what's the solution, right? What does that mean? If you're not going to draft him, how are you going to get a quarterback? If you look at the 5 truly successful quarterbacks that the Browns have had in their history, none of them have been acquired through the college draft. You start with Otto Graham. Right, Hall of Famer, legendary player, signed as basically as a free agent. It was a very different time. They were just starting the league. They were just starting a team. Paul Brown knew him, had played against him when Paul Brown was the coach at Ohio State. Signed him essentially as a free agent. There was no draft involved. He signed him. Frank Ryan, the last quarterback to lead the Browns to an NFL championship, was acquired in a trade, as was Bill Nelson, who led the Browns at the tail end of his career. He was sort of an afterthought when he was picked up in a trade from Pittsburgh, ironically. Led the Browns to a couple of title game appearances in the late 60s, so he was by a trade as well. Brian Sipe. Brian Sipe was a 13th round draft choice in 1972. Didn't even make the team the first 2 years. He was on the taxi squad for 2 years. Made the team as a backup in his 3rd year. 13th round. The draft doesn't even go that far anymore. So if you're going to land a guy like that, that he's a free agent. So I think that highlights another problem that we see that I think that not just the Browns, but all NFL teams sort of suffer from, that when you draft a quarterback, particularly really high in the first round, just the first round anywhere, but high in the first round, a lot of times he's just smothered by the expectations before he ever sets foot on a field. The expectations are so high that he's going to be Peyton Manning. And Peyton Manning is probably as good a player as he is and as nice a guy as he is. I think he's done more to ruin more careers in the NFL for quarterbacks than anything else, because his success is such an aberration. Everyone wants to draft a Peyton Manning. Everyone says, this guy's going to be our Peyton Manning. He's going to step right in and turn us into a championship team. That happens so rarely. And when it does happen, it doesn't happen at that level. But everyone keeps trying to do it. Everyone keeps taking that shot. And all indications are the Browns are going to try and do it again this year, this spring for the draft. So, and then of course the last one, Bernie Kosar. Bernie Kosar, which it's a long story, which Sundays in the Pound actually, one of my books goes into. It's a fascinating story how he actually came to the Browns. He was picked up in the supplemental draft, which it's a very complicated thing, but it's not the college draft. It's even back then when they drafted him, it was set up a different way than it is now. Basically, though, if he wanted to come to, the only way he landed with the Browns was because he wanted to land with the Browns, and he sort of manipulated the system in a good guy type of way to make that happen. And that was a very unique situation. So while they technically drafted him, it wasn't through the college draft. Had they gone through the college draft, they never would have been able to get him. It was a very unique situation. The point being that you got to find other ways. You got to find other ways to find quarterbacks. And I think we saw a little flash this past year with Brian Hoyer, hometown kid, great story, really kind of a tragic story that he got hurt and right at the point where he kind of broke through into the NFL. I think that's more the mold of what the Browns are looking for. Let's face it, we're not looking for a guy who's going to take them to the Super Bowl, right? We want a guy who's going to take them to 8-8. Let's crawl before we run. So I think, and maybe Hoyer's the guy. I would like to think that if he comes back healthy, he'll be the guy. He'll be sort of the odds-on favorite to be the starter next year. And if somebody knocks him out of it, somebody knocks him out of it. But I think you're better off finding a guy like that. I was really excited about 10 years ago when Kelly Holcomb came in. I thought that was a good fit because there was no pressure for him, and I think we saw that a little bit. When he first came in, he was great because there was very little pressure. He wasn't the first-round draft choice that Tim Couch was. He came in very pressure-free and played well. Once he started to get a little pressure, you saw what happened. Things changed a little bit. But I think that if you're going to find something, some sort of even a short-term solution, let's face it, that's the way to go. That doesn't always work either. I mean, look at some of the names on the list. Jake Delhomme, that didn't really work out. I mean, he was supposed to be that kind of short-term solution. That didn't work. Trent Dilfer was supposed to be that kind of solution. Didn't work out. Jeff Garcia, on and on and on. So it's tough, you know, and it's also hard when you have a legacy like the Browns do right now of sort of chewing up quarterbacks and spitting them out. Sort of this is where you go for as a quarterback for your career to die. So we're hoping that something will happen just to get some kind of stability so we lose these pictures of people with the names going down the back, that we have some sort of stability and can turn it around. And then someday you can try and land your Peyton Manning. But you're not going to land your Peyton Manning by saying, we just landed our Peyton Manning. It's going to happen much more organically than that, I think. Number 3. This is one of the real kind of hidden mistakes that the Browns made a long, long time ago. Make a conference call. When the NFL merged with the AFL for the 1970 season, it was set up about 4 years before that. One of the stipulations was that these two leagues were going to merge, but we needed a couple of teams from the established NFL to come over to the AFC, the American Football Conference. They were changing the name, to sort of give a little more weight and sort of anchor this league and legitimize this conference, because otherwise it still would have been a little imbalanced. There would have been more talent, there would have been more history in the NFC and very little in the AFC. And as the story goes, Art Modell graciously volunteered, okay, we'll send the Browns over there. We'll send the Browns over to the AFC. We will abandon all the history, all the rivalries, all the gravitas that we have built up in 25 years of being one of the most successful teams in football and jump over to this new conference. And at the time, and even for years later, it really wasn't thought of as a bad decision. And maybe it wasn't really a bad decision, because I think in his mind, and in a lot of people's minds, saw that as, well, the Browns are going over with a bunch of upstart teams and a bunch of less established, less organized franchises. They're going into this central division with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were a joke at the time, the Cincinnati Bengals, who were an expansion team, and the Houston Oilers, who were one of the worst teams in the AFL at that time. So I think the thought was, okay, we'll go over there and we'll be dominant. We'll just be more dominant than we ever were. We'll get into this newfangled Super Bowl, whatever they're calling it, and we'll continue our dynasty, and we'll pick up right where we left off and just sort of carry it on. Didn't work that way. I mean, if you want to look for a demarcation line in Browns history, that's it. At least prior to their moving anyway, that would be it, is 1970. Things really started to go downhill. They became almost instantly a mediocre franchise. Now, there's all kinds of factors that go into that, some of which we've talked about in terms of bad choices and bad drafts and all of that. But part of that, I really believe, is that they really kind of abandoned their history. So they're not going to, prior to 1970, they were playing the Giants twice a year. They were playing the Bears. They were playing the Packers. They were playing these teams that they really had a lot, Rust Belt type teams that they had these rich rivalries with. And you abandon that. They've played the Giants maybe a half dozen times since then. It's a shame. You know, it was really kind of sad to see some of these great rivalries go by the wayside. And the argument was, well, we get to establish this rivalry with Pittsburgh, or keep this rivalry with Pittsburgh, which, if you look at the time, as I said, Pittsburgh was a joke in 1970. They were a horribly run franchise. They were about to begin this wonderful run that they had, the Steel Curtain era. And if you look right about then, 1970, that's when the Browns started suddenly having difficulty beating the Steelers. They dominated the Steelers for the first 20 years they played them. The minute they go in the AFC, now suddenly they can't win in Three River Stadium. They lose 16 straight games there. They thought, okay, well, Paul Brown, who founded our own franchise has started this little rinky-dink team down in Cincinnati. We're going to kick their butts. No, that turned out to be the other way around. That was almost back and forth. Paul Brown and the Bengals really kind of had the Browns' number there for a while, and now that's carried on. Even to this day, the Bengals have the lead in the all-time series. So this didn't work out the way that they wanted to. And I was really in the back of my mind, if you remember a few years ago, speaking of this week's Super Bowl, the Seattle Seahawks, you remember they used to be in the AFC for a long time. They were in the AFC, and just about 10, 15 years ago, when the NFL realigned, they moved over to the NFC. And it was a big deal at the time. It was like they had their own established rivalries with Denver, which was what makes this Super Bowl kind of cool. They had their own established rivalries that they were giving up to come over to this new conference. In the back of my mind, I was thinking, this was the Browns' chance. How cool would this have been if they had gone back to the NFC, reestablished with the Giants, the Redskins, the Eagles, gone into one of those divisions, and gotten back to their roots. And we started playing the teams that we watched them play and watched them beat when they were good in the 50s and the 60s. That'd have been great. For obvious reasons, and I'm sure that they would argue against it, we wanted to keep, people still like to see them play the Steelers, lose to the Steelers. People still come out to watch them play the Bengals and now the Ravens, which is a whole other travesty and, is a rivalry based on the wrong things. And that's why they wanted to keep that, and I get it. And there's money at hand, and that's the way this ball game is played. But I just felt like that was their chance. They could have moved over. I don't know if another chance like that will happen again for them to move, and I don't know that they'd be interested in it. But I think that's one of those things that you really got to look at, that it seems trivial, but if you want to really kind of connect with the history, which the Browns do, if there's one thing the Browns do well in this era, it's talk about how rich a history they have. But at the same time, they're not willing to put it where their mouth is. So if you want to talk about how great it was when Jim Brown and Otto Graham were there, how about if we connect with our roots and remind people, yeah, you know what, we used to play, we have a rich history, let's celebrate it. Let's not be playing the San Diego Chargers every single year. Okay, pick your day, number 4. This is something that, for example, you'll see one of the nice features that's come up in recent years with, for example, mortgage payments. If you want to make your mortgage payment now, a lot of banks have this special feature where you can pick the day that if you're making an automatic payment, I should say, you can pick the day in which it comes out of your account. It can be, traditionally it's the first day of the month, but you can pick it any day you want up to the 15th, I think, the middle of the month. And it's like, so for a lot of people, that's a pretty appealing feature. So the Browns can follow that same template because, believe it or not, there are certain days of the week and certain dates on the calendar that are much better for them than not. And I don't think they're tuned into this. Again, the Browns Bible kind of broke down their record by day of the week and by month and even by every single day from September 1st through January, I think 17th is the latest that they've ever played a game. So naturally, the most games they've played have been on Sunday, and they have a winning record on Sundays. In fact, there's only one day of the week that the Browns have a losing record, and that's Thursday. So you would think, okay, we have a losing record on Thursday. On the rare occasion, which doesn't happen, it did happen this past year. The NFL has made a point to, okay, let's get everybody to play a Thursday night game. And the Browns did win on Thursday night this year, so there is that, to be fair. But you could almost say, okay, NFL, the Browns could go to the NFL and say, all right, let's play ball here. Can you help us? We want to be a little selective in when we play and how we play because we need all the help we can get. So if Thursdays are not good for us, let's avoid Thursdays, okay? Anybody want to take a guess what the best day of the week for the Browns in terms of winning percentage? Again, similar to the uniform. What's their best day of the week? The most successful day the Browns have had? Day of the week. Not Monday. They're about Saturday. Saturday's their best day of the week. They have played on every day of the week, believe it or not, except for Wednesday. One way or another, they have played on every single day. Some more than others, obviously, and you got to go way back to find them. But Wednesday's the only day they haven't played. Saturday's their most successful. So the NFL's played some Saturday games. Maybe we can nudge and say, hey, let's play on some Saturdays. Let's get the momentum turned our way a little bit here. And while Sundays have been, even through all these years of struggle, Sundays, they still do have a winning record on Sundays. On the other hand, on Sunday night, primetime Sunday night, they're 1-8 all time. Chuck it, avoid it. Let's not play on Sunday nights. Thank you, but no thank you. Similar to when you look at the months. Not surprisingly, considering how they traditionally just kind of fade as the year goes on, December is the only month in which the Browns have a losing record, at least in terms of the regular season. You can count January, but January is kind of scattered because some of it's playoff, some of it's not. There's really not enough of a sample size there. December is their only losing month, but October and November are better than September. So, okay, not much you can do there because the schedule is the schedule, but whatever you can do, I'm talking anything we can do, man. We're looking at minuscule, granular type things, anything at all we can do. In fact, and so while October and November are your best months, in fact, there are 2 days, if you go day by day through the Browns season, there are 2 days in particular that they have a really good history for whatever reason. They're 8-2 on November 18th and November 20th. Those are the 2 most successful days in Browns history. So, can we play on, if Saturday falls on November 18th or November 20th? Hey, NFL, can we set that up? Can we make that happen? Anything. Let's just try a little crazy stuff. The other thing the Browns really want to avoid is holidays. Holidays are murder on the Browns. They're terrible on holidays. They're 8-17-1 all time on holidays. Their worst holiday is Christmas Eve, 2-7 all time on Christmas Eve. And I don't believe they have a winning record on, and I have to check, but I don't believe they have a winning record on any holiday at all. I mean, it's just like any holiday, Labor Day, Halloween, Veterans, you name it, they have a losing record. And then, of course, there's opening day. Opening day, since the Browns have been back, as we well know, they have really struggled, and sometimes magnificently struggled, from Dwayne Rudd taking his helmet off too early and costing them a game, losing games in bizarre fashion. They've played, of their last 16 opening games, they've lost 15 of them. And since 1980, they are 7-24 on opening day. So technically, yeah, okay, you got to have a first game, right? Do we have to do it week 1? Could we skip week 1? If you remember, the first 2 years the Browns came back, they had them have their bye week. They forced them to have their bye week in week 17, which was bizarre. That's not the point of a bye week. That was supposed to be in the middle of the season to give everybody a break. And they put it at the end because they figured, okay, the Browns are an expansion team. They're not going to be in the playoffs. We'll just, for scheduling purposes, we'll just make them sit that one out. Let's cash that chip in. Say, hey, look, twice you forced us to have our bye week at the end of the year. Let's cash that in. Let's take our bye week, week 1. We get 1 more week to prepare, and we get off this schneid of losing 15 out of 16 in week 1. Skip it. We'll just play 16 straight games starting week 2. It sounds crazy, right? Yeah, it sounds completely crazy, but you know what? This is Browns football. We're going to try anything we can. Number 5, hire an entertainer. This was something that really was going to hammer on more had they not hired a coach last week, because it still would have been in play. And maybe they did. I mean, there's a lot of comparisons that Mike Pettin is like a Bill Cowher. And a lot of people have said, oh, yeah, he's got the passion. Like, maybe he does. We'll see. But the point is that if you look at the 14 full-time head coaches, not including the interim head coaches that they've had, 14 full-time head coaches the Browns have had prior to last week, 10 of them have losing records. Only 4 of them have winning records. But of those 10 that have losing records, there's only 1 of them that we really remember fondly, and that's Sam Rutigliano. Sam Rutigliano had a losing record as a Browns coach, but he is embraced. He is revered in some cases by Browns fans. Why is that? If you look, and it goes in Cardiac Kids, it goes into it quite a bit. First and foremost, he's a wonderful human being. Wonderful human being. I wrote at one point that the Browns have had better coaches in their history, but they've never had a better man as their head coach than Sam Rutigliano. I spent quite a bit of time with him when I was putting the book together, and we've crossed paths a few times since. Wonderful guy. I mean, if you've seen him on TV, if you've seen him on the STO show that he does, or heard him on the radio, just a super guy. He's articulate, he's intelligent, he treats everyone the same. Just a wonderful, wonderful guy. And I really believe, and he's a funny guy. You know, he's a little mellow now in his older age, but especially if you were following the Browns in the late 70s and early 80s when he was their coach, he was fun. He was fun. He was a lot of fun to be around. He was fun to talk to. Even when things were going bad, he was sprightly and energetic. It was fun to follow him. It was fun to follow the Browns, and that's the key. It's more important, honestly, to have an entertaining team than a winning team in some cases. I think we saw that the reverse of that If you remember in the early 90s when Bill Belichick was here, Bill Belichick didn't enjoy much success. He wasn't the genius then that he's claimed to be now. But even when the Browns were successful, and he had he had some moderate success, but even when they were successful in that era, people were not excited about this team. This team was boring as hell. And he was mean. He was mean to his players. He was mean to the media. He was just like a troll. Like, just everyone hated this experience. And yet his record is basically the same as Sam Rutigliano's was. Sam Rutigliano was an entertainer. He's an energetic guy. And I think that translated on the field. It's no coincidence that the Cardiac Kids happened on his watch. I don't think the Cardiac Kids would have happened, that era would have happened, that type of football, that type of team. That wouldn't have happened under another type of coach. He was the perfect guy at the perfect time. Well, I'm not saying we need to hire Sam Rutigliano back, but I think that's what they need to be looking for. Maybe that's what they look for, and that's what they saw in Mike Pettin. But we don't need a push-button guy. We don't need an intense guy. We need a guy who's going to make this fun, because God knows we need fun. We need this to be fun, and that's what Sam did. That's what Sam did better than probably any coach the Browns have ever had. Like I said, others have been more successful, but I don't think anyone's been more entertaining or probably more beloved than Sam Rutigliano. I mean, it's really an amazing story. This is a good one. Auto draft. This is really, really something that the Browns really need to focus on. As we have established, the Browns don't draft well, right? They have never drafted well. Even in this new era, they haven't drafted well, but throughout their history, they really haven't. And if you're familiar, the term auto draft, if you're familiar at all with fantasy football, if you've played fantasy football or know anyone who plays fantasy football, there are two ways of putting a team together. One, usually the way that people do it is before the season starts, everybody will get together at BW3. Everyone in your league will get together, put on their jerseys, and they'll sit there and eat 40 wings and spend 7.5 hours and pick their guys, go through round by round and pick it. It's agonizing, let me tell you. I've done fantasy football for years, and I hate this part. I just hate it. Some people love it, and if you love it, that's great. But I'm just bored to tears. The first round's always kind of fun, and all right, who's going to be the first pick? Let's do this, and then the rest of it's just a nightmare. The other option is, and I've done this too, and I enjoy it much more, is auto draft. What auto draft means is you don't actually get together. You just sort of, and now in this age where it's all automated and all internet, via the internet, you can kind of pick who your preferences are. You can kind of weigh certain guys so that when your turn comes up, and there'll be an auto draft, it comes automatically. If this guy's there, this is who you get. If this position is what you want to focus on, they'll take the top-ranked person at that position. There's no real human element to it. It's done in an hour, and then you log on your computer. Oh, here's my team. There it is. God knows the Browns need this, because if there's anything that we've learned from their last 15 years of drafts is that when the human element gets involved, things go off the rails very quickly. So and just look at the history. I mean, we could go through 1999, could have had Donovan McNabb or Edgerrin James. They picked Tim Couch. Next year, they could have had Brian Urlacher or John Abraham. They go with Courtney Brown. Year after that, could have had LaDainian Tomlinson or Richard Seymour. They go with Gerard Warren. Year after that, they could have had Ed Reed or Clinton Portis. They go with William Green. We can do this all night. A couple years after that, could have had Ben Roethlisberger. They go with Kellen Winslow. Year after that, they could have had Aaron Rodgers. They went with Braylon Edwards. And it's not just in the new era. Like I said, if you go back, and maybe this is even worse, if you go back 25 years, 26 years ago, they could have had Rod Woodson. They picked Mike Junkin, the mad dog in a meat market. The year after that, they could have had Thurman Thomas, Hall of Fame running back. They went with Clifford Charlton. This is the Browns' history. This is their legacy. They walk up to the line of scrimmage, theoretically, on draft day and just make the wrong decision. So my suggestion is that they go auto draft. That what they do is they take all the experts, every expert, Mel Kiper, ESPN, all these guys, all these lists, and we'll see them in the coming months as we get up to the draft. You'll see all kinds of rankings of players and where they are, and this guy dropped because he had a bad showing at the combine. This guy went up because it turns out he's faster than we thought he was. It'll be this endless drama that's all we'll be able to talk about for weeks in Cleveland. So you take all these lists, compile them into this big spreadsheet. You can even put your own opinions in there if you want. I'd recommend against it, but go ahead and do it if you want to do it as the Browns GM. You come up with this aggregate list, aggregate ranking list. And then when your turn comes up, whatever the highest ranked player is on your list, you take them. I don't care what his position is. It doesn't matter. Take him. Move on. Don't make any trades. Don't make any last-minute decisions or last-minute changes. Don't let anybody talk you out of anything. Take that guy. You're not going to hit on every one, obviously. Nobody does. That's not the point. The point is that you're not going to miss every time. If you just go by average, you're going to be much better off than doing what they're doing, which is trying to wheel and deal and trying to fix it all in one draft. Can't do it. Auto draft, I'm telling you. It's the way to go. Recruit Hollywood. This is the one of all of them that actually may be happening already. If you've noticed, or if you've seen the preview, there's actually a movie coming out in April, right before the draft, called Draft Day. That is actually about the Browns. There's a movie coming out about the Browns, believe it or not. And it's so close to reality that it's a little scary. It's about Kevin Costner, who was here. They filmed it in Cleveland last summer. Kevin Costner is the GM, the embattled GM of this horrible Browns team that just hired a new coach and can't decide what they're going to do with the draft, and there's all kinds of personal drama and all what have you going into it. Very, very close to reality. And so in a way, I can get why Browns fans would be a little hesitant about this, because like we're being made a joke. We're going to see a lot of, there's a Super Bowl commercial, in fact. There's going to be a preview during the Super Bowl on Sunday for the movie. And I can see why some Browns fans would be, oh God, here we go again. They're making a joke out of us. And to some extent they are. Who knows how this is going to turn out. But here's the thing. Here's why we should be excited about this and embrace this. If you recall, 25 years ago, there was another movie that came out about another Cleveland sports team called Major League, about the Indians. And it was the same, very, very similar type of response at the time, probably especially before it came out. Everyone's like, what is this? Are we about to be made fun of? Are we being picked on? What's going on here? Little wary, because if you remember the Indians back in 1989 when the movie came out, it had been almost 40 years, more than 40 years since they had been in contention. They were in worse shape then than the Browns are now. So the movie, which presumably most people have seen, is of course the Indians being the Indians and being terrible and having this horrible team with this owner who's trying to make them so bad that she'll be able to move them. And all of a sudden they get good and they win. And it's fine. And so Major League, of course, became this embraced movie. Everyone, even today, people love this movie. It's really special to a lot of people, not just Indians fans, but in Cleveland especially, it's revered. And here's why this ties in, is that not only was it an entertaining movie and helped Indians fans get through a troubled time, but if you look, that changed the zeitgeist of the Indians. Whether it meant to or not, it sort of changed the whole psychology of the team. It didn't help them land any new players. It didn't help any of the players become better than they were. But it's suspicious that the year after the movie came out, suddenly now the Cleveland says, okay, yeah, we'll pay for your new ballpark that we call Jacobs Field. We'll pay for that. 4 years after that, it opens, and the Indians instantly are a contender. Year after that, they're in the World Series. Everything changed, and now we're off to the races into the best era in this team's history. It was an amazing turn of events. In 5 years, they went from this woebegone franchise to the best in baseball. And I've always felt that Major League was the starting pistol for that. So could Draft Day do the same thing for the Browns? I don't know. I haven't seen it, have no idea what's going to happen, but I like the idea. I think that that's something that really could, in a silly way, could turn things around, could get people actually excited. If they can visualize success, if you believe in it, can visualize it, it's possible. The scavenger solution. This is another one, again, tying in with the Browns' inability to draft well. You think, okay, well, if they haven't drafted well and they have a history of not drafting well, how in the world have they ever been good? How did they, because they have had good years. It's been quite a while. But how have they managed to have the success that they have had without being able to draft well? And the answer is when they've needed to be, they've been outstanding scavengers. And by that I mean that they have managed to find opportunities in strange places, in strange times, and take advantage of them, and build a team while their competition did not. It starts at the very beginning of the franchise. If you look at the end of World War II, when the All-America Football Conference was founded and the Browns were going to be a charter member of the league, Paul Brown was named the head coach and instantly went to work saying, okay, before anyone else knows what's going on, the war wasn't even over yet. It was still 2 years away from the league playing its first game. He's like, I'm going to get some of these. I know these guys are out there. Some of them are. Lou Groza was on a battleship in Okinawa. I'm going to go get him. I'm going to go sign him before anybody else has a chance to. So he instantly knew what he was doing, went and got a bunch of the guys, Bill Willis, Lou Groza, Otto Graham, got all these guys quickly in the kind of chaos of the end of the war before anybody else had a chance to. Instantly, the Browns had the best team in this new league and went on to completely dominate that league for the 4 years that it was in existence. It happened again when that league collapsed. 4 years, not even collapsed, I guess, shut down, and then three of the teams were absorbed then into the NFL. Paul Brown did it again. He's like, okay, I know this league really well. 3/4 of the players in this league are now looking for jobs. I know these guys. I'm going to go get them. I'm going to go get a bunch of these guys, bring them onto my team, make them even stronger going into the NFL. So the Browns improved going into the NFL in 1950 because they said, okay, this league is shutting down. Let's go get some of these other pieces and build it up. There was no draft or anything. They just went out and got them. But it wasn't just Paul Brown. The most notable time that this had ever happened, that they ever used this to their advantage, was actually in the 1980s. 1980s is when things really started to go bad for them in the draft. They really started to draft poorly. But it was also one of the most successful decades in Browns history. And a big reason why is, if you remember, the United States Football League, the USFL, was a very short-lived but memorable chapter in the history of professional football. Quickly explained, the USFL was basically conceptualized as a spring league. This was going to be another professional league that was going to spend a lot of money to get a lot of college guys and a lot of lure guys from the NFL to play games in the spring. The idea was that people love football so much that they won't just watch it in the fall. There's an opening. Let's have it play in the spring and into the summer and finish up right before the NFL starts. So that league did, and they did it for 4 years, and it worked for the most part. They ended up biting off more than they can chew when they decided to go up against the NFL and transition into the fall too early, and everything fell apart from there. The point is that when that league collapsed in 1986, the Browns did a better job than any other NFL team of picking up the pieces. They said, all right, we know we've traced these guys, we've followed these guys, let's pick them up. So if you remember the late 80s, if you remember those great years in the Kozar and the Schottenheimer years, that era there, and you look at, all right, Frank Minifield, Mike Johnson, Kevin Mack, Felix Wright came from Canada, but the same basic category, Dan Fike, and most importantly, Lindy Infante was the offensive coordinator for the 2 years that the Browns were on the brink of the Super Bowl. All of those guys came from the USFL. The Browns found them, targeted, signed them all, brought them in. Some cases had to wait a year or two, signed them before the USFL collapsed, knowing that the USFL was going to collapse, and said, okay, we'll wait for a year to get you. And they did, and it worked out brilliantly. Take those guys away, I think that you have a very different chapter at the end of the 80s. I think that group of guys turned the Browns from a good team into a very good team. And so that's an example. Now, that's not to say that they have to wait for a league to collapse or a world war to break out, but there's got to be other ways, and being able to recognize opportunities when they come your way to atone for the fact that we've struggled in the draft traditionally over the years. So mostly it's recognizing opportunities when they come your way. Number 9, live in the past. And this is appropriate. Of course, that's the poster from Back to the Future, from the original Back to the Future. And that's appropriate not only because of the tone of it, but Back to the Future came out in 1985, which was the beginning of the Kozar-Schottenheimer era, which was the last era that we really enjoyed. So what by that, live in the past means that the Browns, as I said before, have always talked a good game when they talk about the rich history of the franchise and knowing how the fans, trying to connect with the fans, the present with the past, and making them appreciate all of that. Like, all right, once again, let's put your money where your mouth is. I would say that one of the best things the Browns could do, and this may seem contradictory, but would be to actually, if not encourage, then certainly not dissuade bars and restaurants from, on Sunday night or Sunday afternoons during the fall, having them broadcast old Browns games from the 80s, from the 60s, great Browns games that, if nothing else, will get people excited about Sundays. Because let's face it, in the last 10 years, watching the Browns has become like a chore. I mean, people do it because they are faithful, and God bless them for doing it, but it's not fun. You know, it's not fun to watch the Browns, not on a week-by-week basis. So I think if you can tie that in and say, all right, let's at least keep people in the habit of enjoying Sunday afternoons. Give them something to watch. Let's crank out some more games on DVD, classic games, into a DVD or Blu-ray type of thing. They did that a few years ago. They brought out a few greatest games on DVD. Well, let's do more. Let's celebrate this. Let's give people something. Let's have people watch something that doesn't frustrate them about the Browns. And then when the time is right, and they are fun to watch again, they'll be able to pick that right back up. Okay, I don't have to just drop this habit of watching the Browns on a Sunday. I'm still watching the Browns on a Sunday, maybe from 30 years ago, but on Sunday I'm watching the Browns. Let's do something. Keep that habit forming, and then when the Browns are ready for prime time once again, they can pick it up again. Lastly, and perhaps most important of all, exercise the patriarch. And that's Paul Brown. That's the bust of Paul Brown that's in the Hall of Fame in Canton. And what that means is, and this may be, as I said, the most important of them all, and in some cases the most mysterious of them all, because it doesn't just involve us. This one involves the Cincinnati Bengals as well. What this means, this is incredible, but if you look at almost 23 years ago now, August 5th, 1991 was the day that Paul Brown died. We talked earlier about the demarcation line for the Browns in 1970 of the rich history, and then when it started to slide downhill, 1970 was kind of that moment for the Browns. If you look at, if you want to see another demarcation line, look at 1991, not just for the Browns, but for the Bengals. Prior to Paul Brown dying, in all the years, because he was involved in both of those teams' history, rich history for both teams. He was very much involved in both of them, founded both of them. Prior to his death, the Browns, on that day that he died, the Browns had an all-time winning percentage of .627. The Bengals had an all-time winning percentage of .504. Both of them were over 500. Both of them have been up and down, but they'd had their success. They'd certainly had more success than failure. Since Paul Brown's death, in the 23 years since then, the Bengals have a winning percentage of .395. The Browns have a winning percentage of .353. It's about a 30-point drop for the Browns and a 20-point drop for the Bengals, 15-point drop for the Bengals. A lot of people, especially in Cincinnati, this hasn't been picked up so much in Cleveland, a lot of people in Cincinnati really believe that Paul Brown has cursed their franchise. It's a curse of the Bambino type of thing. Don't know why exactly. It's not that anyone really did anything to make him mad that we know of, but especially for the Bengals, and the Bengals were reminded of it again here a few weeks ago when they did make the playoffs and instantly lost because they have not won a playoff game since Paul Brown died. They've been to 5, lost every single one of them. And in fact, between the two of them, the Browns and the Bengals, they've only won one playoff game since he died. They're 1-7 since his death, which you think, well, okay, is that really that rare? In the 43 combined seasons between the teams since his death, the Browns and Bengals have made the playoffs, as I said, 7 times. Putting that into perspective, in the 10 years before he died, the two teams made the playoffs a combined 10 times in 10 years and won 8 playoff games in that time period. In the last 23, it's been 1. Prior to that, prior to his death, the teams had combined for 33 playoff appearances, postseason appearances, including 13 trips to the Super Bowl, the NFL championships. Something's going on here. I mean, Paul Brown has done something, put the whammy on us and the Bengals. Somebody did something to piss him off. And if you want a cherry on top of the sundae, if you remember, his high school, his career began, his coaching career began at Massillon, Washington, just down the road, the high school. And he turned that into a football empire, one of the most dominating football programs in the history of high school football in the 1930s, and has a menagerie of state championships through the years. But since he died, they haven't won a state championship. They've been close. I think 2001, 2002, and 2009, they were in the state semifinals and got to the championship in 2005. They've been right there and have never been able to quite seal the deal. And the other funny thing, and this is why we may need to batten the hatches a little bit, but one of the things that made you think, well, why would he curse these teams, was that each of those teams, up until now, named their stadium after him. It was Cleveland Brown Stadium, Paul Brown Stadium in Cincinnati, and then Massillon Washington Stadium was Paul Brown Stadium as well. Now the Browns have gone and sold out. Now it's not even, his name's not even on the door. So maybe is that the best way to really kind of appease a ghost who's pissed at you? I don't know. I don't think that's the right move. So we may need to prepare for some sort of retaliation on Paul Brown's part, the ghost of Paul Brown's part. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know if we need to call in gypsies, we need to do some sort of exorcism. I don't know what it is, but something's going on with Paul Brown. I was suggesting, I'd written a column a couple of years ago, not even about Paul Brown, but talking about ideas for how to break this curse that not just affects the Browns, but seems to afflict the Indians and Cavs as well, was to call in Jimmy Buffett. Jimmy Buffett, why? Because actually, and this is a little known fact, and tying back to the curse of the Bambino as well, that in 2004, when the Boston Red Sox won the World Series in 2004, broke the curse of the Bambino, won a World Series for the first time in 86 years, Jimmy Buffett held a concert at Fenway Park 2 months earlier. And it was the first concert at Fenway Park in 30 years. And while he was there, he did a funny little thing where I think he hit a beach ball with a bat. I can't remember. It was this whole ceremonial thing that was to break the curse. And 2 months later, they won the World Series. Jimmy Buffett had never been there before, walked in, broke the curse, instant success. Can we call Jimmy Buffett in? I don't know. I don't know what it is. We need to get some people smarter than me to get in here and work on this. So I think that there's something there, a statue outside the stadium. I don't know. And I don't know if we need to join forces with the Bengals. As much as that, turns everybody's stomach, maybe that's the way to do it. But there's something going on here that I think can be fixed. So, in conclusion, we've said some bad things about the Browns, right? I mean, they're easy to pick on, but it could be worse. Honest to God, if you look at history, not just in terms of where the team is now, it could be worse. And they are not the worst team in NFL history. This is not the worst run in NFL history. Keep in mind there are 7 teams that have never won an NFL championship that are not the Browns. There are 7 teams that have never been there that have not done what the Browns have done. And looking at individual teams, too, that have been through long stretches of incompetence, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers went 12 straight years of seasons in which they lost 10 or more games. Browns are not clear about halfway there. They've got a ways to go before they reach that. The New Orleans Saints, if you remember them, when they started, they went 20 years without a winning record. The first 20 years of their existence, they didn't have a winning record. And they obviously didn't make the playoffs in that time period either. So the Browns, okay, they've sprinkled a couple in there. They're better than that. And the worst of all, there was a team in the first 39 years of their existence were completely hopeless. I mean, completely terrible for basically 4 full decades. They had a .378 winning percentage, which again translates to a 6-10 over a 16-game season now. In 39 years, they had 7 winning records. I mean, this is just pathetic. In those 39 years, they made the playoffs 1 time, played 1 game, got blown out, then didn't make the playoffs for 24 years after that. You talk about a drought. Browns don't have anything on that. That's something else. Of course, then once they did make the playoffs again, they started a pretty memorable little run, and most people don't even know these 39 years that they even existed. It was this dynasty started, and that was it. It was washed away. There's no reason why this couldn't happen to the Browns. Anyone want to take a guess who that team was? Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers were 10 times more pathetic than the Browns are right now for 10 times longer than the Browns are. So there's hope. So the next time a Steelers fan gets in your face and starts giving you a hard time, say, you know what? It happens to everybody. It happened to you too. And there's no reason to think that when the Browns bust out of this, which they will at some point, there's no reason to think that, hey, we're going to start our own little dynasty and this will all be forgotten. And we won't remember this era. We'll look back at this. This will just be a black hole. We won't even remember this time period. I don't know. What do you think? So that's it. It's too cold to go outside yet. I'm sure you want to stay in here a little bit longer. So open it up to questions or ridicule, whatever you'd like to do. Throw it to you. Yes, sir.
Did you explore the idea of putting numbers on the helmet in your...
It's It's a good idea. There was an era where they did do that briefly, that they did have numbers on the helmet. I haven't broken that down. That'd be a good idea. That'd be a good way, because there have been, especially once Jimmy Haslam took over and they started flirting with the idea of changing uniforms and changing helmets. I think that was an idea that did get floated. So that's a good idea. Part 2. Check that out. Number 11. We'll check that out. We'll see what the helmets look like.
We'll put on number 12, the elf.
The elf.
As soon as Wendell dropped the elf, everything that was another beginning of the end.
That's a good point. The elf. Yeah, and the elf, the elf, there's such a inner debate among Browns fans. There's some who, again, because of that history and because they associate it with those winning teams, love the elf. And it's started to creep back a little bit. You've seen it on, I think, some of the jackets that they wear on the sideline, and you've seen it a little bit, but at the same time, from any kind of objective point of view, you look at that and say, oh my God, that's an elf, and they're playing football. Why is there an elf in this? Why is this happening? So yeah, I mean, there's two ways about it. Is like, do we do that and try and connect with that tradition and try and get some of that positive energy, or do we just make ourselves look more ridiculous than we actually are? We already are. So I don't know. That's a good idea. I mean, it's something to explore. Again, there are no bad ideas. That's, I think, the point of all of this is like, we got to do something, man, because what we're doing now is not working. Yeah.
2 questions. One, who picks the uniforms? Is that a coach's decision? Is that a marketing decision?
Question.
I mean, I always wondered, they come out with these different schemes. Who actually makes that call?
I think it's more marketing now than it used to be. I think it's much more of a tribal decision. I don't know that there's one person that picks it. Back in the day, I remember specifically in the late 80s, during the Marty Schottenheimer years, there was no question about it. They just wore white at home all the time, because Marty, when he came in, wanted basically the same mentality, because they had been through a couple rough years, and he said, no, we're going to white on white. We're wearing white at home. That's the glory years of this franchise. That's what we want to do. And so for the 4 years he was coach, that's what they did. Once he left, then it was, okay, the fans kind of wanted to see brown, and then one game you'd see brown, one game you'd see white. That was almost like a player's decision. Like, I played well wearing the brown last week. Let's wear the brown. And so they'd hanker. But again, I don't know. I guess it would be the coach, or back then it was the coach. Now I feel like you're right. It is more of a, okay, we're trying to push these orange jerseys that we just put in the team shop. Let's wear those, how about twice this year? You pick the day when we wear them, but we're going to wear them. I feel like that's more going on. It's much more like baseball in that sense. The Indians have, I think 3 or 4 different jerseys that they can wear at home, and you don't have to wear white, you can wear blue, so that is also much more of a marketing thing, and there's different caps and all this, so that's just the future of sports too, that we're seeing multiple uniforms and more choices. But that's all the more reason why you need to kind of figure out which ones work and which ones don't.
I guess my second question kind of dovetails into that too, is that obviously since they've been back in '99, it's hard to have a jersey.
Yeah, like the Tim Couch jersey. Yeah. Yeah. How many people have Peyton Hillis jerseys still in the closet, right? Yeah, right.
But my question is, okay, so what's the optimism now? Is it the fact that maybe we have some stability at management, maybe, and we now have a chance to get talent? Because it seems like we've been devoid of talent. Is there optimism now because we have so many draft picks, we have cap space, we have, I don't know if you want to believe in the front office, but, these types of things that are, going forward? I mean, what's the glimmer of hope?
There would have to. I mean, it has to be forward thinking, because you're right. I don't know. If you look, they made such a big deal about, we've got 5 Pro Bowlers. I'm like, all right. I don't know that Joe Thomas's jersey would really sell, but he's the only real anchor. I mean, he's probably the best player on this team, or certainly most stable player on this team. The problem is that when you have a situation like they're in now, even when you do stumble across a good player like a Josh Gordon, all we heard last year was rumors that he was going to be traded. So they're at a point where it's like, even when you find talented players, all they want to do is trade them for more draft picks. So it's very difficult. Certainly from the jersey perspective, I'd advise everyone against buying any kind of jerseys for a while, because we've seen that time and time again how that doesn't work. But yeah, but the more general answer to your question, I think it has to be trust. If you have any optimism, you have to have trust. The problem with that is that I don't know that there's stability in the front office right now. Jimmy Haslam could be halfway to jail. We just don't know. A year from now, it could be a completely different landscape. And that's the problem with Mike Pettin coming in, and why they had to go through 10 other candidates to get to him, was that everyone's like, yeah, thanks, no thanks. I have no idea if I'm going to have a job a year from now. I'm just going to wait till next year and see what's out there, because I don't know that I really want to take this job and get fired a year from now when a new owner comes in who wants a new front office, and the front office wants a new coach, and we start this all over again. So we just don't know. So I guess it depends on how much faith you have in Jimmy Haslam's legal team. If they're able to get him off the hook, or if he is indeed guilty. You know, we just don't know. That's going to be the key to this whole thing, honestly, I think. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for coming out through the Polar Vortex. I appreciate it. And yeah, there's books back there if you want to check them out. And appreciate you coming out. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, man. Hey, how are you?
Can you write to Grandpa from Evan and Matt?
To Grandpa from Evan and Matt. All right, let me do this one piece at a time. To Grandpa from Evan, E-V-A-N,
Yes.
and Matt, M-A-T-T.
I'm Jack.
I'm Evan.
I like the Browns because they're not doing so well now, but I love their team's history, and my whole part of my dad's family is a humongous Browns family.
I like the Browns because their history, they used to be pretty good at football. And it's just a very interesting history of how they started off and how they ended up in the present time. And we just saw Jonathan Knight, and
You got your book signed.
we got our book signed. So, go Browns.
So tell us how many games you've been to, and when you started, how old you were when you started going.
I've been to 2 or 3 games since I moved here from Dallas, Texas in 2009. My grandmother took me one time to a against Bengals. It was a really fun and great game. I enjoy watching Browns so much.
I've been there about 3 or 4 times with my dad, and it's just fun watching them and the fans roaring. And
Did you tailgate or go to the dog pound?
we went to club level on there, and the view was just amazing because we were probably at the center field and really high up, so we could see just about every player on the field with no one like blocking our view, and it was really nice. And not Jimmy Haslam, but what's his name? It was the announcer. Where is it? Donovan?
Jim Donovan.
He was like right above us, and it was really awesome.
I enjoy being on the 3rd level to see everybody in the front row, so there's nobody blocking my view.
Perfect. You guys are great fans. Thank you. Production facilities for this program were provided by Hudson Cable Television, your window to the community. If you have comments or questions on this or any HCTV program, please leave us an email message at hctv@hudson.oh.us or call us at 330-653-2500. We'd love to hear from you.